the audience was, well, what about Darfur, and what about Katrina, and what about 9/11? I'm now coming to believe, and I didn't believe this 3 years ago, but as more I study law of attraction and hang out with the other people teaching it, I'm now beginning to believe that everything is attracted into our life, either by our behavior, by our thoughts, by our fears, by our fantasies, the things we talk about, the things we watch on TV, and we go, oh, I hope that never happens to me. Or we watch a movie like Blood Diamond and we see all this violence over diamonds and we get really upset about it. We actually create more of everything we have intense feelings about. So literally, I want you to act as if you're creating everything and become really, 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 really disciplined about what you think, what you read, what you watch, what you talk about. I was with Mark Victor Hansen in New York about 3 months ago. We were getting some awards for books, some convention, and we went out to dinner afterwards about 10 o'clock, and we talked till about 2 in the morning. And literally, in that 4 hours, neither one of us said one negative thing about anything or anybody. Mark told me the projects he was working on, and I went, that's fabulous. How can I help you? You need to meet this person. I just met that person. You guys need to network. It was all about how do we do it? Where do we do it? What's happening? What's good? What's good news? Mark was saying, wow, we can educate a kid in Africa for $120 a year. We can send him to college in Africa. I didn't know it was that cheap. You could do that. We talked about microloans. We talked about educating. We talked about some research that shows the fastest way to end hunger in the world is to educate young girls in rural villages. Who knew the research? But it's there. So literally, we just yes, yes, yes. How do we do it? Then I get on the plane the next morning to fly back to LA, and the guy next to me is talking about how crappy the world is, how bad his children are, the government, this thing is bad. Never occurred to us once to have a negative thought. It was all about what do we want? Let's make it happen. How can we help each other? You go. And so basically, that's what you want to be doing. Only focusing and talking about exactly what you want. When you talk about something's not working, all you're going to do is create more of it's not working. People come up to me and say, I've been doing the law of attraction for 3 months. I still don't have my car. It doesn't work. Well, what you're focusing on is it doesn't work. And you're going to get more of it doesn't work. What you want to focus on is where it is working. Hey, I wanted to get a place by the window at the restaurant, and I got it. You know, some people keep what they call a manifestation journal. At the end of every day, what did I manifest? Well, how's it working? And what we know is what we focus on, what? It expands. And so you want to focus on only that which is what you want. Okay, whatever you think about, talk about, and fantasize about, or give your attention to, you're going to attract more of. So you really have to become deliberate and intentional. Now, 3 stages we talked about: ask, believe, and receive. So I want to move into the next section here in a moment. We're going to talk about believing, and we're talking about creating a vibrational match for that which you want into your life. You must always be feeling good. Anytime you're feeling good, you attract more into your life to feel good about. When you're feeling bad, when you're upset, when you're pissed off, when you're resentful, when you're scared, when you're in doubt, you're actually pushing away all the things that are waiting to come into your life. Most of what you want is kind of sitting out there in the parking lot waiting to come in, but when you're talking about negativity and you're criticizing other people, it's pushing it away. And the faster you can get over that, the faster you'll manifest stuff into your life. So the more we can be in gratitude and abundance. Let's talk about gratitude for a minute. When you watched the movie The Secret, you saw about the gratitude rock that Lee Brower uses in his life. John D. Martini never gets out of bed until he has a tear of gratitude. Sometimes he says, I'm in there for an hour, just focusing on what I'm grateful for, but until that tear comes out of my eye, I do not get out of bed. And John is a millionaire, probably 100 times over. Started out as a dyslexic kid. He was basically dying when this person took him under his wing and gave him an affirmation, which was something like to the effect of, I am a wise person and everyone I touch is benefited by my wisdom. And now, John has read every book ever written by any Nobel laureate in any field in the last 10 years. And he's a genius at what he does. Whereas before they said, you got to drop out of school, you're ADD, and at 14 he dropped out of school. Gratitude. Rhonda Byrne, when she wrote the book The Secret, she said, I didn't start to write until I had so much gratitude in my heart that I would have a tear come down my face. She said, as soon as I was in that space, my fingers were just flying. In a book, she wrote that book in like 3 weeks. 3 weeks, wrote a book that sold over 3.75 million copies because she was in the space to receive. Because when you're in a space of gratitude, you're saying, I accept that which has been given to me, I appreciate it, and what that does, it opens up a space for more to flow in. The word grace, we say we're under grace, the grace of God. The word gracias in Spanish, gratitude, it's all from the same root word. The more gratitude we have, the more grace we receive that flows through us out into the universe in terms of our creativity and drawing to us that which we want. Abundance and generosity. You want to be always giving as much as you can. Barbara talked about that hugely today. Be in a state of joy. I now teach that at least 1 hour a day you need to take for yourself and do the things that you most love to do. Right now, I'm learning to play the piano, so that's what my hour is about. For my wife, it's the horse poop and petting our dog and our cats and all of that stuff. She loves it. She just does. For someone else, it's listening to Bach or Beethoven or listening to Bono or whatever it might be. For someone else, it's painting or gardening. I was doing a seminar up in Canada, and I was actually on a TV show up in Canada, and this woman stood up in the audience, and she said, I have a question. I said, great, what is it? She said, I haven't been happy for 7 years. You're talking about joy. I haven't experienced joy for 7 years. I said, what happened 7 years ago? She said, my husband died. I said, really? I said, what did you used to do that brought you joy before your husband died? She said, well, I used to paint. I used to garden. I used to play the piano. And I said, have you done any of that in the last 7 years? She says, no. I said, well, here, go home, and tonight I want you to play the piano. Tomorrow I want you to go out and garden, and the next day I want you to buy some paints and paint something. Then I want you to write me a letter or give me a phone call, and I gave her my card. And about a week later I got a call, and she said, I can't tell you how happy I am. Happiness partly comes from doing things that make you happy. And for some reason, most of us spend our time doing the things we think we should do, and we don't go out and do the things that make us happy. So literally make a discipline of doing the things that bring you joy. It's like having a joy diet. And basically, if you can get into joy all the time, like Mother Teresa was, or the Dalai Lama is, or Mark Victor Hansen is 90% of the time, and I am 90% of the time, then things just start flowing into your life at a magical rate. Okay, forgiveness is another big piece. You must forgive, because anytime you're holding resentment, you're not in joy, you're not in love, you're not in inner peace. You have to let go and release. And there are all kinds of powerful processes. John Gray wrote a book about the total truth process. If you can feel it, you can heal it. There's a book on letting go on forgiveness by Jerry Jampolsky. I mean, there's many, many techniques out there. Find one and use it. The emotional freedom technique, the 5-minute phobia cure. There's a ton of technology that can, in like 5 minutes, you can get rid of a phobia. In 5 minutes, you can get rid of a negative belief, just tapping on certain meridian points. Things that we teach in our seminars you can go into in greater depth. Be in a state of love. Always expect the positive. Always expect the positive. I basically gave Mark a little feedback. I mean, I think everything he said this morning, but once he said, oh, I don't think Al Gore will ever get 2.5 million people to watch that TV show. I said, Mark, that's a negative thought. Expect the positive. If you don't expect it, it won't happen. So you want to always be in that state of expecting that it's going to show up. Expecting it. I mean, how many of you would call Domino's Pizza, order your pizza, and then call them back and go, are you guys really going to bring it over? You sure? You're not kidding me? Yeah, you really do that. Okay. You know, if you did that 3 or 4 times, they'd put your number on caller ID and they wouldn't take your call anymore. And yet we do that with the universe all the time. I'd like a Porsche. Oh, but I can't afford it. I'd like a Porsche, but, you know, whatever. Now, probably more today we should say, I'd like a Prius instead of a Porsche, right? We're all learning. Some of the things we've been trained to want aren't really the best things for us. And we have to learn some new stuff around that. All right, I'm going to skip over that slide. Here, I love this quote from Tiger Woods. He says, one of the things my dad kept instilling me was the joy of the game. He made it fun for me. A lot of times I see a lot of kids, they don't enjoy being out there. It's a shame. You're supposed to enjoy the game. I say the same thing about life. You're supposed to enjoy the game. One of the things I try to instill in my clinics is, yes, go out there and give it all you have, but more importantly, enjoy what you're doing. If you're not loving it, you know, all the teachers say, do what you love, the money will follow. Follow your passion, follow your heart. I don't know if Alan Cohen said this when he talked to you, but it was one of the things I learned in his book. Did he mention this concept of hell yes or hell no? Yeah, that's a great idea. If it's not a hell yes instantly, it's called screw it. If you got to be going like, well, maybe, maybe not, I'll make a list. These are the pros, these are the cons. If you didn't get an instant, yeah. I mean, when Lynn Twist, who started the Hunger Project, and I met her about a year ago, said, we bring people over to our chateau every summer, 16 people for a week. I just went. And she said, would you like to come this year as our guest? And it was like, yeah, I want to come. It was like, well, let me talk to my wife, see if we can schedule it. As soon as you're doing that, it's like, it's not good. So you got to be following the excitement, following the juice. Mother Teresa she said, once I asked my counselor for advice about my vocation. I asked, how can I know if God is calling me and for what is he calling me? He answered, you'll know by your happiness. If you're happy, this will be the proof of your vocation. I think it was Thomas Edison said, when your vocation becomes your vacation, then the rest of your life is a blessing. So you want to be doing the thing that you would do, that you get paid for, doing the thing you love to do. In my seminars, I'll have people make a list, 20 things you love to do. When I first did that exercise, I wrote, I love to hang out with really cool people. I love to hang out with intellectuals who are thinking cutting-edge thoughts. I love to open my mail. I love to listen to music. Anyway, I went down my list. Then the seminar leader said, think of 5 ways you could make money doing that. I thought, how can I make money hanging out with really cool people? Well, one of the things I just did 2 years ago, I created something called the Transformational Leadership Council. We have 100 members of people like John Gray, who will be speaking to you tomorrow, and Gay Hendricks, who wrote all the books on relationships. And we get together twice a year for 4 days. And as a result of that, we have now co-ventured all kinds of cool things that have basically doubled my income in the last 2 years. And I'm hanging out with cool people. I'm making money doing the things I thought used to be what you got to do when you weren't working. So you want to keep following that passion. Now, law of attraction says believe. You got to believe it's possible. Trust your internal guidance system. We've talked about that. I want to share with you a story about a guy named Cliff Young. Cliff Young was 61 years old when he showed up at the beginning of a long-distance race in Australia. The race was 875 kilometers. That's about 650 miles. He was wearing overalls. He was wearing construction boots. All the other guys were 25 or 30. They're all in their Adidas, Nike, Puma, Asics running gear. He looks like an old farmer. He actually had galoshes on over his boots, he says, in case of rain. They said, have you ever run a long-distance race before? He said, no. I said, well, why do you think you can do this? Have you ever run a marathon? I mean, this is like 6.5 days. He said, no, but I'm a farmer, and I have to chase my sheep around, and sometimes I have trouble, and I have to chase them for 2 or 3 days, and I don't seem to get tired. I think I can do it. He said, why don't you start with a shorter race? He said, well, this was the only days that were free on my schedule when there was a race scheduled. I said, okay. So all the racers, the gun goes off, and they all take off, and they're really running fast. And Cliff's running like this. They called it the Cliff Young Shuffle. Now, Cliff had an advantage nobody knew about. Cliff had never talked to a coach. He'd never talked to an elite distance runner. He'd never read Runner's World magazine. He never read a book on long distance running. He didn't know that when you do a long distance race, you run for 18 hours, sleep for 6. Run for 18, sleep for 6. Run for 18, sleep for 6. So he was running so slow, when he got up to the part where everyone was gone to bed, they were all asleep. No one told him to stop and go to bed. So he just kept running on by. He ran nonstop for 5.5 days and broke the record by 12 hours. See, sometimes what you think you know gets in the way of what's possible. If you believe you can do something, you can figure it out. But you have to believe. You have to believe it's coming into your life. I love his quote. It says, never tell anyone something cannot be done. God may have been waiting for centuries for somebody ignorant enough of the impossible to do that very thing. You know, you think of all the technologies we have, the airplane, FedEx. When the guy that put FedEx together, he was an MBA student at Yale, and he presented the paper that outlined the FedEx process. They gave him an F on it and said it's not possible, it will never happen. And now when you think it absolutely positively has to be there overnight, you go what? FedEx. So Everything that exists started out as somebody's dream, somebody's idea, and 9 times out of 10, they told you it couldn't happen. Here's a kid named Farrah Gray, 19 years old, born in the ghetto, mother's on welfare. At the age of 6, he starts his first company. By the age of 11, he has 3 companies. Now, they're small. They do things like take rocks, paint them, go door to door, and sell them as paperweights. But he made $50 his first day doing that, which was more than his mother made when she was the housekeeper. And then he got a bunch of kids together, and they would go to older people, and they'd say, we'll go buy your groceries for you and bring them back in our wagons. You just give us a couple of bucks. He gave one to the guy who went to get the groceries, kept one for himself, had a thing going. By the age of 12, he created something called the Urban Neighborhood Education Economic Council, called UNIQUE. He was getting businessmen like many of you and Harv and people like that to come in and speak to the other kids who were 12 and 13 to teach them business practices. By the age of 14, he had read a book by Deepak Chopra called The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success. One of them was the law of least effort. In other words, the thing that is the least effort for you, the thing that's easiest to do, that you can't imagine people would pay you for, is the thing that you need to go for, the thing you love to do. He said, what do I love? I love food, and I love kids. So what I'm going to do is start a food company for kids. He said, what do kids like? Kids like sweet things. So he created a syrup, like a maple syrup type thing that his grandmother used to have a recipe for. And in 1.5 years, he built that company up to, now he's all of 16, and he sells it for $1.5 million. He drops out of high school, moves to Las Vegas, starts a newspaper, opens a real estate agency, then a real estate development company. Then he writes a book called The Realionaire at the age of 19, and he's worth tens of millions of dollars. Why? Because he believed he could do anything he wanted to do. He said, if someone else can do it, I can do it. If Harv can do it, you can do it. If Mark can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. If Eric Wyanmayer, a blind guy, can climb Mount Everest, there's nothing we can't do. But you have to believe it. So every project you create, you believe you're going to create, you're going to get the result you want. Oprah Winfrey said, you do not become what you want, you become what you believe. When I was on the Oprah Winfrey show, sitting next to her, the auric field that came out of her, the level of charisma, would almost knock you over. And she said, I believed this stuff long before it was called The Secret and so on and so forth. But she believed as a little child, I can do anything I want. And she went out and did it. So can you. Step number 4 says release the brakes. It's another way of saying create a vibrational match. And I'll just talk about this for a few minutes, and I think my time's going to run out here. Now, how do we do that? In order to receive something into our life, we have to be feeling the feelings we would feel if we already had the thing that we want to come into our life. So I have to feel like a millionaire before the million can come in. I have to feel abundant. I have to feel full of love before I attract the love I want. Gandhi said, be the thing you want. So if you want love, be loving. You want joy, be joyful. You'll attract more of that into your life. So I'm going to teach you 4 quick techniques. Most of you know these, but ask yourself, am I doing them? Number 1, affirmations. So I have an affirmation that says I'm reveling in my $6 million a year personal income. Actually, this year it's up to 9 on my affirmation card. So you want to have an affirmation describing the result as already achieved. I'm reveling in my income. And I close my eyes every morning, and I feel the feeling. I see the bank account. I see my IRS report, $9 million gross personal income. And then I move to my next thing. This is one I used a number of years ago. I'm enjoying looking at my physically fit 185-pound body in the mirror. Now, if you look at that closely, you'll see my face when I have brown hair cut out and put over a body that was in some muscle magazine. And I put that on my mirror every morning. And every time I'd look at that, I'd say, gee, I don't quite look like that. And then I'd go into the gym, I'd lift weights, and I'd eat better and so forth. Now, I'll never look like that. I'm not going to spend 6 hours in the gym. But it basically motivated me. And it said I'm already experiencing it right now, even though I wasn't. By the way, a great technique, and I put that off on person. Don't freak out in the AV department up there. But I just didn't want you looking at that slide. When you're trying to lose weight, take your scale, and whatever weight you want to weigh, write it on a piece of paper, put it over your scale. So every time you step on your scale, you go, oh, far out, 185. This is cool. Because see what happens, you step on there and go, shit. 220 pounds, that sucks. And what are you going to attract when you have that? You're going to attract 220 pounds, and that sucks. See? So you're basically fooling yourself. You're programming your unconscious to create the 185 or the 115 or whatever you want. When Mark and I were writing Chicken Soup for the Soul, people would say, what are you doing? We're writing a best-selling book. We never said we're writing a book. We're writing a best-selling book. And then it changed to we're happily celebrating the sale of 1.5 million copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul. One I have right now is I'm sharing my open, loving heart and deep spiritual wisdom with everyone I meet. You want affirmations for every aspect of your vision, and this is one of mine. So you state your desired outcome as if it's already happening, feel the feeling, and then you got it. I'm happily driving my new BMW down the highway. I love this idea. You go to the dealership, you take your camera, you sit in the car, you look out the window, and you say, take my picture. I'll be back to buy this in a month or two. Then you take that picture home, blow it up, 8 by 10, 14 by 10, put it on your refrigerator, make it your screensaver, and then it just keeps coming into your